Yeah, hello, lots of greetings from Germany. Today I would like to speak about some aspects or some parts of my dissertation project. And in concrete, I will speak about insights into the life stories of teachers with an alternative approach. I call them, due to the federal state I'm researching in, lateral entrance, and about challenges and professional biographical resources. I would like to start with a quote. The biographical subject does not only react to specifications, does not only decide between career paths, does not only adapt to new conditions, and does not only process critical life events. It also develops its own interests and makes use of opportunities. It designs plans and perspectives and deals with its own designs. It remembers and dreams, it hopes and invents ways out, and knows that it would die. And above all, it gives meaning to its own life, independent and of function and success. The occupational biography is, for my research, of particular importance in the discourse on professionalization of teachers with an alternative career path. With regard to the career entry as a teacher and lateral entry, profession and biography play a supporting role in a close symbiosis. Following the quotation of Schulze, the human being as a biographical subject is bound to numerous decisions of the life course. Thereby, the biography subject is integrated not only in reactively, but above all also actively into the own development process and forms in itself. As a result, decisions are always integrated into biographical trajectories and cannot be viewed in isolation from it. My dissertation is about exactly this connection of biography and occupational profession. Therefore, today I would like to talk about individual professional biographical experiences, especially biography as an educational process emerges clearly when processes are triggered by changes. My research focus is on experience, challenges, or crisis as a career starter in the specific lateral entry. For the project, I use narrative biographical interviews from lateral entrants in a qualification measure of 2 years to give an insight into concretely experienced practice and to reconstruct biography, teaching out of field and coping with crisis, so that behind the foil of teaching out of field, dealing with challenges as a newcomer becomes clearer. The interest lies in looking at biographies, life courses that are part of the educational process throughout the whole life. For some time, I have been able to reconstruct orientations in the material that deal with this educational process. In the documentary method I'm using, the orientation is found in a so-called dimension after Bonsack, which is like a given topic or something similar, which has to be validated in a kind of way by the reconstructed orientations. At this point, looking at this one specific dimension, I focus on the occupational biographical repertoire, which the lateral entrants embedded in their habitualized action practice in different ways. To give only a very short insight, because time is simply short, here's an illustration by Schulze in which the biographical subject is placed in an overall context. And for me, it is just of interest here that there are two active forces. One is biography as life, as you can see above there on the left, and here also society and cultural social influences play an important role, and biography as an educational process. The dissertation project locates the importance of biography research in the context of professionalization and points to common references with regard to subject, society, biography, and profession. Following this, I ask two questions. How do lateral entrants talk about their school challenges or crises in everyday school life? And how do they deal with the experienced crisis? In addressing core problems and paradoxes of pedagogical action practice and a structural logic of professionalism, Oevermann has been dealing with the dialectic of crisis and routines along his structural theory for over 40 years. For him, the process of professionalization is always one of crisis, since only in this way can autonomous practice of life have a chance to gradually develop. Oevermann structures these experiences by means of 3 different types of crisis, and crisis can be experienced when smooth sequences of action cannot be completed. The 3 crises are, and I just want to mention them shortly, the traumatic crisis, the decision crisis, and the crisis through leisure. According to Hinske, it becomes clear along the structural theoretical approach that crisis makes certain demands on the practice of actors' insight, which call for a dynamic implementation. For successful handling of crisis, it is inevitable to make choices that prove themselves in practice. The action that a life practice has decided to take fits the situation. That means the life practice can cope with problems and demands, and in this case, the action can become a kind of routine that pre-structures future decisions. Thus, life practice becomes a site of crisis, as well as coping with them. Embedded in the duality of crisis and routines, proven routines emerge from the crisis, which in turn provoke new crises. Along the praxeological sociology of knowledge, my research goal is to reconstruct typologies that behave in a certain way. The goal is the reconstruction of an overall typology in which individual cases or excerpts are compared, similarities and differences are reconstructed, and thus typologies emerge. The figure just illustrates a very complex methodology and tries to show all this parts of the process of the reconstruction. In the following, I would like to address the question of how lateral entrants talk about their crisis and how they deal with them. First of all, I have reconstructed 3 types that differ in the way they deal with the action practice. The first one is the adapted pragmatic type, the second, the analyzing, identifying type, and the third one is the exploring independent one. In selected passage, I would like to go into some orientations in order to pursue the question of how they talk about these crises or how they interpret this crisis and how they deal with them. So in the following, I would like to discuss this dimensions of crisis experienced and solved by non-professionally trained teachers who partly teach out of field within the typologies. The first one is the pragmatic adapter type. The first type can be identified as a type whose modus operandi is very stable, and most of the time he's acting very resilient. It shows a common negotiation of the existing norms and rules of the school. Yet this does not emerge as a crisis-like discrepancy. The interviews do not mention conflicts, and situations are described in which their needs are met. Questions in the interview are answered on a very abstract theorizing level, and few passages refer to a very descriptive, argumentative speaking, how things are or have to be, less how they were actually experienced performatively. The career entry is reconstructed as very soft and major problems without major problems or barriers, neither with colleagues or the school administration, for example. The transition as a conflict-poor process is shown, for example, in a small excerpt. This one is from Mr. S. That's the nice thing. If I bring something on and say it doesn't work, so now then it just changed. If I want that, so then that is just so changed. So it is implemented because I'm just a person for a specialized file that does for sport and now, yes. And for the other things, I can ask anyone. So there have never been any problems. Things that one uses, well, whole lessons. You do today Sachunterricht in the class because you just no one there. There was just never. And they are also that they still pull the brake. And yes, I have been then a bisschen reingefuchst. It's a dialectic phrase for incorporated. And they realized just, okay, with them, you can also do something else or have something else done. He will not die on it. According to the excerpt, the orientation towards self-running, Orientierung einer Selbstläufigkeit, becomes clear in the sense that no hurdles have to be overcome. Things happen and there were never any problems. And from the beginning, it was clear that the role as a lateral entrant meant and that the protection of the person was above the school constraints. So no lessons have to be given that can't or won't be done. And that is very important because a lot of lateral entrants experience different situations. The description of the handling in the school or the teaching is framed here by Mr. Schwarzdorn very positively, and everything was adapted to him and his needs, not the other way around. The second type is the analyzing, identifying type. The second reconstructed type is defined as the analyzing, identifying type. And this type tries to deal with difficulties arising in the school practice as a lateral entrant in a very individual way. In the own professional role as a teacher is not documented as stable in the modus operandi, rather in the process of the challenges on a propositional level. Crisis-like moments become apparent when it is a matter of doing justice to the school program. The experienced crises show themselves above all in uncertainties in the selection of methods and didactic implementations suitable for teaching. Identifying these problems, this type can mark the difficulties without having direct or ad hoc suggestions for solutions. As a result, the problem-solving process or the focused search for strategies to address the crisis remain locked in a kind of, I call it, initial phase. This is illustrated by the excerpt from Mrs. Mispe. When asked how she copes with lesson preparation, she answered the followers. Maybe you can just skim the part or read it just in a second. In this section from Mrs. Mispe, an orientation towards a teaching norm of preparation and follow-up becomes clear, which presupposes and thus makes necessary a complete preparation and follow-up for a good teaching or being a good teacher, something like this. A certain attitude towards new contents and the handling of them is documented, and this type recognizes it needs and can identify that. Theoretical basics are needed first, and that a basic technical knowledge is a central prerequisite for teaching. Thereby, Mrs. Mispe makes clear that she has the need for further qualification in order not to do intuitive teaching. In addition, she marks an existing limit and approaching crisis if this need is not met. Thus, also temporal, urgent perspective for professional qualification becomes very clear at this point. It is not only in a few years that upgrading is necessary, rather the crisis makes itself clear at the beginning of the teaching activity. In addition, a need for correctness, what means correct teaching, that can also withstand and control authority is documented on a proponent level. Yeah. In doing so, Mrs. Misbel makes herself a controller of her own teaching and makes it clear that there's a need to check when it is good or when it, when she succeeds. Solution strategies and the concrete technical area are not linked to the passage. Mrs. Misbel ends her explanation with a reference to having to inform herself and abstracts her need to an abstract level without naming concrete solutions. Looking at the third type, which is the explorative independent type. The third exploring independent type has another typical approach to deal with hurdles, problems, and tasks that cannot be clearly assigned. The third type is also aware of weaknesses in habitualized action practice or identifies their breaks and can mark needs. Here, however, the third type makes concrete attempts to sound out its options for action. The orientation toward the search for strategies is supplemented by an orientation toward wanting to work out changes. This passage from Mrs. Jochelbeere documents a developing attitude towards one's own role as a newcomer and a new teacher in the process of imparting knowledge. The role is strongly linked to the instruction exchange with the students and the successful teaching mission located for them, because in the beginning mistakes were made, but now not anymore. Mrs. Jochelbeere locates her own role as a teacher transparently vis-à-vis the students with regard to her own fit as a teacher and her growth in subject didactic knowledge. Her development is framed on a communicative level by job shadowing and generous support from colleagues. Implicit in this narration is a normative expectation of entering a profession as a newcomer, of not yet being able to know everything and needing help. An orientation towards, I call it legitimation for professional help, can be reconstructed. In this type, support systems are readily accepted and are part of the problem-solving strategy. This can lead to crisis if no such systems are offered, which happened to some of the lateral entrants I interviewed. Then, and this is what makes the third type independent or autonomous in action, they can detach themselves from their crisis-like construct and acquire help on their own. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into more detail at this point, so I come to the end of my talk here with a few very brief interim results. So in conclusion, the following can be summed up. First of all, which is very important for me, there are visible or reconstructible aparias in a habitualized action practice between norm and habitus, and these are resolved differently by the different types, and partly they identified and dealt with, and partly norms determine the action practice and dissolve in it so that no conflict arises. Moreover, by working with the documentary method and the praxeological sociology of knowledge, it is possible to show how lateral entrants adopt performative routines of habitualized practice and let them become the process of their own biographical subject. The orientation touched upon illustrates tensions that need to be negotiated in the career entry. So it is a matter on orientation of something like a self-running process, an orientation towards the legitimation for professional help, the search for strategies, or the orientation towards wanting to work out changes, and an orientation towards teaching norm of preparation and follow-up, or being or showing to be a good teacher, doing good, giving good lessons. And further orientations are reconstructed in my dissertation and substantiate a sense genetic type formation. And of course, my main goal is to shed a light into teaching in between and out of field, because that's what lateral entrants are doing in conjunction with their educational biographical transitions and ruptures. So thank you very much for your attention. As I mentioned, it is my dissertation project, and I'm still working things out. It's a very complex method I'm using, so feel free to ask me anything or give me a feedback or a comment.